Let me know when to begin, Trudy.
Shortly. Yep, it's almost over. We're waiting for it to go live.
Confirming we are
Okay, I
live.
think we are live.
We are live. Okay.
Okay, we're live. Okay, we're ready to go, Kathy.
Okay, good morning. We're going to call this regular meeting of the Leelanau County Redevelopment Brownfield Authority to order. And roll call will, I will call out the names. Dennis Boucher.
Here.
Rick Foster.
Here.
John Ahrens is not present. Chet Janik.
Here.
Patricia Sodas Little.
Here.
And T.F. Texidus. Did I say your name right? T, you're muted.
Yes. Why?
Hi.
It
How
says
how
I'm
did I-
muted by the host,
How did I do pronouncing your last name?
F. Taxiadis. It's phonetic.
Texidus. Okay. Welcome to the Brownfield Authority.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you all.
We look forward to working with you. We're glad you're here. We always get excited when we have new members. And I see Dennis has his hand up. Dennis?
That's correct. What do we call T? T?
T,
T?
just T.
Okay, T. Good to meet you. I'm Dennis.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Again, welcome. So we have a quorum. Our director Trudy is also present. So we'll go to consideration of the agenda. Trudy, is there anything to add or change on the agenda at this point?
No, there's nothing further.
Okay, so we need a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
So a motion by Dennis, a second by
Support. Oh,
Rick. I'm not sure who got there first. Any discussion? Okay, I'm going to do a, pardon me?
Just have some feedback. Kathy, there's just some feedback.
Feedback, okay. So I'm going to do all the votes by roll call. Okay, Dennis Boucher.
Dennis,
Did you get my affirmative?
Is, okay, that's your,
ask them to raise their hands.
okay.
Can each of
So-
you raise your hands as you're voting, please?
Okay.
Yeah, so if all those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, the agenda passes. Okay, now we'll move to consideration of the February minutes. Patricia,
I move to approve the February minute.
there's a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Chet. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor of approving the minutes, raise your hands. Opposed? Okay, the minutes are adopted. Go on to public comment. Is there anybody here willing to, or wanting to make public comment?
Tony?
Not at this
Mr.
time.
Whitaker? Okay.
No, I'm familiar with the content of this meeting here, so I'm here as a hearing observer and with the possibility that I may make some comments later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Sure.
Okay, we'll move on to director comments.
I have no comments, Kathy.
Okay, no director comments. We then go to the consent agenda.
I'll move that
Okay.
the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Dennis, are you seconding?
I certainly am.
Okay, so there's a motion by Chet, a second by Dennis to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? The motion passes. So we go on to old business. There is none. So we go on to new business, which is director memo in part 1 application for assistance from the former Sugarloaf Resort. And I'm going to turn this over for Trudy for introduction.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. This application came in, and I want to confirm also that we received a payment for the Part 1 application. The application outlines what the owners/developers would like to do on the property, and they have some proposed dollar values in here as well. I would like to just caution everyone on those because it's really not until we get into the Part 2 where a brownfield plan would be developed, where we would see more detailed numbers on the plans. So, you know, these are some preliminary numbers here. I just wanted everyone to keep that in mind. The application outlines the different parcels that are included in this application, as well as the owner of record and the taxable values. They've spelled out the size of the property, the buildings that are on there, and what they would like to do, starting with some demolition. The environmental reports that have been done, I put in the memo the background history on this because we used former assessment grants under the US EPA to do some environmental studies on this property. So all those reports are on file in my office. And they're not included in here, of course, because of the length of them, but they are on file if anyone would like to take a look at those. So really what you're looking at with this is, does this application fit with your goals for assisting properties? Is this a property that may benefit by Brownfield Brownfield using tools and incentives to help redevelop this property? And if so, then you would accept this application, which then opens the door for the developer to submit a Part 2 application. The Part 2 really goes into more detail. That's where a preliminary brownfield plan would have to be submitted to us for review, and we'd have to have a lot more detail on the actual plans and the eligible activities that could be reimbursed with a brownfield plan. And that's basically all I was going to say at this point, unless you had any other questions on the memo. And of course, Rick is online here, one of the applicants, and he can answer any questions or give you more detail if you'd like.
Thank you, Trudy.
Since Mr. Beguero's here all the way from California, where it must be 7 a.m., would you like to give us just an overview of the application and introduce yourselves? I know you and I and Trudy and Patricia have met, but I don't think the rest of people know who you are, Rick, so maybe just an overview would be helpful. And are there comments that you'd like to make? And thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to do this remotely. I hope everybody's healthy and staying safe and taking care of each other. We're grateful to the county for letting us make this application for the Brownfield plan on a very complex project that we have some, definitive goals that we're trying to achieve. Obviously, we've hit a timing issue in terms of we don't know how long the current situation is going to stay in place, but our goal was to submit the Brownfield plan and move forward with a demolition plan for the project, essentially before we actually go on with most of the major pre-development plans for it. We think that the demolition is an important step in terms of enhancing the value of the property and giving us the flexibility to maximize whatever the final design of what we hope to put there. The Brownfield plan was submitted with the hopes of having some flexibility of having the county and other resources made available to help assist us in terms of getting the work done. And obviously it's an expensive undertaking, and certainly there's not a lot of return in terms of the cost that you have to put in to demolish the property, given the environmental and just the resources that have to be put into place to remove all of that material. So we're grateful, like I said, for this opportunity and treating the commission's help. And it's our plan to keep moving forward with what we had talked about previously in terms of setting a schedule up to move forward on coming up with some times to get out there and begin our demolition, assuming we get the permits and all of those things approved properly. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer, but that's essentially where we are right now.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Does any of the, any member of the board have any questions for Trudy, for Rick, or for Jeff at this point? T.
Actually, several questions. On page 12 of the package, there is a list of key project contacts. I note that EnviroLogic is shown as the developer's environmental engineer and consultant. If that is the case, would another environmental consultant represent the Brownfield Authority, or am I missing something on this?
Trudy, do you want to answer that, or should I go to Jeff for that?
Well, perhaps both of us. What I was going to say is, yes, the firm cannot represent both of us. And this is the Part 1 application. Jeff will have to answer whether or not there's actually a contract in place where he is the environmental consultant for the applicant. We don't know that yet. Jeff, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think, we've not, the only work that we've done so far on the Sugarloaf Resort has been on behalf of the County Brownfield Redevelopment Authority in implementing the EPA grants to do some of the work. And so we were in concert both with the property owner, but through the county's Brownfield. And then we have had some input to help them fill out their application. But we don't have a contract with the developer at this point in time for this project.
So at this
Back
point,
to-
there's
back- Back to T for his follow-up questions.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. And I guess that's a question for Jeff primarily. Are there adequate environmental data at this point in time based on the past assessments for the developer to determine the cost of the environmental activities and non-environmental? I see there is about, at least preliminarily, there is about 8 million anticipated in in costs brownfield to address brownfield conditions. Is there enough data to come up with enough cost estimates to put in a brownfield plan based on your knowledge of the site?
Yeah, good question, T. I think based on the number of studies that have been done over the years by multiple consultants, I believe we have a pretty good handle on the condition, both soil and groundwater at that site. Maybe not as much on groundwater, perhaps. The resort building itself really has minimal contamination that we've been able to observe. There is some contamination associated with past ag activities potentially on some off properties. And also there's some contamination still remaining associated with a maintenance garage that's out there. So as well as the fact that we've, I think we have a pretty good handle with respect to asbestos issues that are in the buildings that are proposed to be demolished. So that number could be incorporated into a cost. I mean, frankly, to be honest with you, based on the knowledge and information that we have, you know, the bulk of the environmental costs in my mind on that site are going to be demolition to get rid of the buildings and things that they don't need versus actual cleanup. So like, for instance, under the resort area, the building itself footprint, the proposed footprint, and that's really, you know, there's a lot of, I know, I don't want to speak for Mr. Breka, but and Mr. Katowski, but I know that, you know, some of their plans are still somewhat preliminary from a standpoint of actually where a building's going to be specifically situated and so forth. But based on, you know, if it were to have a similar footprint in a similar area of where the existing resort building is, you know, there is not a lot of contamination in the ground or underneath, if much of any. We anticipated more because there was a big tank that we pulled out that was a fuel oil tank and some other things, but as best that we can tell under the building, for instance, there wouldn't, you know, we need like a vapor mitigation system or soil removal or any of those types of things.
That was my question, whether there is any vapor intrusion that has to be addressed, because that's 8 million is a big number for this. And the building the buildings that would be demolished are about 145,000 square feet approximately.
That sounds about right. I've not done the estimates. We have not done any of the estimates on the demolition cost side of things.
I see.
And we have not really gone through an exercise with them to come up with an actual demo cost and so forth. I think those are some estimates that they've used based on their knowledge of and the contractors and team members that they work with. I'd have to go back to let Rick talk to that, I guess, from the standpoint of demo costs.
Well, actually, as a follow-up question to that, I noticed that the construction costs, site improvements are about 112 million. Is that number based on approximate square feet to be constructed times an amount per square foot? Or how did this number was developed?
The number was developed as an estimate for the scope of the project that we currently have
preliminarily planned for the site. The idea for this project isn't to have the bulk of the project sitting where the existing buildings are, but to have several sites throughout the project that do different things. So it's clearly an estimate. Estimates usually like this at this point in the process are not accurate, but it is a ballpark that we feel that it would be a minimal starting point for the project that we have envisioned. We're really at the very, I mean, if you looked at this as a football field, we're at the 1 foot line. So we have a lot of planning to do. We're experienced in terms of development, and we sort of put pen to paper and come up with what we estimate as a project budget. So there hasn't been any full-on cost estimating done yet, bids, anything like that. But we're at the point now where we've estimated where we think these costs would be as a starting point.
Going forward, the next phase, the application part 2, would include more concrete specific numbers, and that is months and months away. Is that correct?
If you're asking us, yes. I mean, the part 2 application is a much more detailed submission, and will require us to start putting actual bids to the project and getting confirmations on material and subcontractors, and the work we'll do ourselves, and actually putting a cost budget together.
So
Okay.
the part 1 application is really entering into the idea of working together and using the Brownfield tools to help with the economic development of the property. It's showing an indication and a willingness for the county and the developer to enter into future agreements. Is that safe to say, Trudy?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yeah, just to kind of go back to what Rick has said and what T has said too, is that, by no means have we gone through any really formal exercise yet to identify all eligible brownfield activities for this project from a standpoint of, what could be eligible through tax increment financing, what could be eligible through any programs that the state may have through MEDC, what potential eligible costs might be through a rural development grant, related perhaps to infrastructure and so forth, as well as utilities and utility upgrades. I mean, they've had some fairly extensive conversations with the various partners and stakeholders related to that. But I know I think the big pressure on both them and others is to get the building down for one, and try to put those plans together from a standpoint of finding all the resources that can come to bear to make this the project that they're envisioning. I hope I don't mean to put words in your mouth, Rick, but I'm thinking that's kind of where we've been working towards, or you've been working towards.
No, I appreciate you giving that description.
Are there any more comments or questions from the board members? All right, let's finish with T first.
Have there been discussions with MEDC? I see in your application, you have $1 million for CRP. That's Community Revitalization Program funding from MEDC. Has there been discussions with MEDC and any indication of their interest in supporting this project?
We had a discussion with a representative of the MEDC well over a year ago when we started making our preliminary plans. The MEDC is always very welcoming in terms of hearing different ideas, but I think we have a long way to go in terms of determining what is actually eligible and what they're interested in doing with us. And we try and be transparent with them. And they have lots of different slots for lots of different things. And hopefully there'll be some type of a slot for us regarding this project. We're hoping, we're putting many of our hopes with the different USDA programs that are available. But we have met with the MEDC. We'll continue to meet with them and discuss, what help they can provide.
And my final question, if I could, is on page 17 of the application, it shows the current taxable value and the estimated future taxable value upon completion. And it shows us the future as 175 million as taxable. Is that perhaps the true cash value rather than the taxable?
If you're asking, this is Rick. Yes, I mean, that's based on what we would assume a market value of the completed project would be.
Okay, so the taxable will be half of it.
Probably half of that, yeah.
And then one last thing, Kathy, in Trudy's memo, it shows that there are some attachments, site plan attached, or did I misunderstood that part? It's on the last page of, is there site plan?
There is not a current site plan, correct?
Okay, that's what I assume. Thank you.
Patricia, you had questions?
Rick, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That you are financing through PACE for part of this project. Is that something that you've already started discussions with, or is this something that's on the agenda to kind of reach out to them?
Well, we have a very close relationship with our PACE lender. So we have spoken to them about this project, but given a length of time in terms of when that piece of it would come into play, we haven't gone into great detail with them, but we have a close relationship with Petros, who's our PACE lender, and we're in the midst of other projects with them right now. So we speak with them regularly about what's coming down the pipeline, and that may change in terms of some of the infrastructure work that may be necessary that they would fund ahead of time. So we're not there with them yet. Certainly mention the project to them.
Okay, thank you. And I was reading I know everything is tentative right now until you get a little bit further down the line, but I want to compliment you on including youth sports and a daycare program and all of these pieces, workforce housing. Those are essential to the success given our situation here in Leelanau County. So thank you so much for incorporating that into your initial thinking.
Appreciate it.
Are there any other comments and questions from board members? Rick?
Does Sweetbread have any other businesses other than luxury resorts?
Sweetbread is a special purpose entity formed specifically for this project. So it has no other business other than owning and developing and hopefully operating Sugarloaf.
This one project?
That's correct.
Okay, and it's not related to any of the other developments in Michigan that have been done?
That is correct. It is a special purpose entity that owns one asset, which is this, which is the Sugarloaf property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Okay, so the action that we have in front of us today is to, it's really just accepting the Part 1 application. Is that the right terminology, Trudy, or is it approving the Part 1 application?
Just accepting it and moving it forward.
Okay, so it's the first phase that says basically that we're interested in continuing on to another level, which is the much more detailed level of having the brownfield plan and the actual numbers and the actual plans. So this initial step is just Part 1 application for working with the Brownfield Authority. Patricia.
Tell her to wait.
BRA accept Part 1 of the application for Brownfield Authority.
That's a motion?
That's a motion.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
Excuse me, Kathy, can you restate that, please?
Oh, okay. Patricia is making a motion to accept the Part 1 application
For the Sugarloaf Brownfield.
for the Sugarloaf Resort property. Is there a second? Rick Foster has seconded the motion. Any discussion on this? Seeing none. All those in favor, raise your hands. Hands down. All those opposed? Okay, the shows that the motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Baraka, for being here, for being part of our meeting. We hope to see a lot of you in the future.
Yes, thank you very much for your support, and we look forward to meeting with you as soon as things make it possible for us to get back there.
All right. Thank you.
You all stay safe. Thank you for your time.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Going back to our agenda, we're on to our financial statements. Up first is claims and accounts.
Someone wants to make a motion, they have to raise their hand.
Rick, do you want to make a motion for claims and accounts as our treasurer?
Sure. I move that we accept them as presented.
Second.
I'm sorry, who was a motion by Rick and the second was who? Chet. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Hands down, all those opposed. Okay, that motion passes, and that was going to the page. It was in the amount of $926.25. Back up to the agenda. There is no post audit, correct, Trudy?
Correct.
And there is no budget amendments and transfers, correct?
Correct.
All right, so we move on to correspondence communication items. And Trudy has included in our packet the updated and adopted policies and procedures. Is there anything else you want to report on, Trudy?
No, that was it. I wanted to make sure that you had it in your packet specifically for reviewing the Part 1 application today.
Okay. Public comment.
We have two.
We have two public, okay. Dennis, we can get to you during member comments.
So we have Tony and Rick.
Okay. Tony wants to go first.
Okay, I have a question. Now that the Part 1 application has been approved, does this mean that they can proceed to the demolition schedule, given that the state will clear them to do that on June 1st?
This has we have nothing to do with any approvals for demolition. That would be a construction code permit that they would have to apply for. Is there any other steps involved in that, Jeff Hawkins?
No, I think it would be up to them, you're right, to obtain the appropriate permits, both from local permits as well as state permits in order to proceed with demolition. Keep in mind that the brownfield application that you approved primarily, or accepted, primarily just sets the stage for them to proceed on to the next step of pursuing potential support from the Brownfield Authority through primarily a brownfield plan or tax increment financing. So that, just it presents an opportunity for them to pursue support through that. But that brownfield plan using tax increment financing really, all it does really is it positions them to be reimbursed in the future for their demolition costs, assuming they make investment on the property down the road. So brownfield plan approval is really not necessarily linked to the demolition, although, they could still incur the cost of demo and then get it approved through a brownfield plan in the future, should you approve it. But so they may pursue that brownfield plan prior to demo, but I think I'm not sure what their goal is or what their plan is from demo, but first course is to get the local permits and the state permits. Yes,
this authority has no permitting jurisdiction over demolition or building, but by working with us, they may get some of those costs reimbursed. So, any other comments from Tony?
Well, I want to be sure I understand that the approval of this Part 1 application, does this mean that they've been accepted for reimbursement by the Brownfield Authority?
No, it does not. Because that is not what they've asked for yet. So that's a much longer process. That one has to go to, has to have a local jurisdiction approval, has to have a county board approval. It's a much longer step. And that's why we broke it into two categories, the application process. So the first application process is to say, yes, your type of program, or your type of development is the type of development that we work toward and that we work with and that meets our goals. So yes, go ahead and work on the next step, which is all the multiple steps and public hearings and approvals needed. Anything else from Tony?
I'm not sure what else to ask, is that because my main concern as a director of the Sugarloaf Townhouses is the immediate or expediting the demolition of that property as it stands now. And
Okay.
I just wanted to be sure that we're making good progress in that regard, because they scheduled a initiation date of June the 1st, given state approval for doing such a thing. And I just want to make sure that we're going in the right direction to expedite this demolition.
Well, we're certainly not going in the wrong direction. So I can't vouch for any timing on any parties, but there's nothing that's been held up at the Brownfield level. They're seeking to interest in working with the Brownfield indicates that they're working toward moving forward on the project. And that's all I can say. I can't speak for anyone on the other side.
Well, Tim Stein, the township supervisor, has made a rather strong statement, which I support, that this is going to be done regardless, that the demo has to take place, and there shouldn't be any impediments to moving ahead with that.
Right, and that is out of the jurisdiction of the Brownfield Authority completely.
Okay.
Okay, is there any other public comment?
Do you have someone?
Yeah.
There's one more here.
Mr. Char?
No, I'm passing. Thank you.
Okay, so there's no other public comment. Any director comments, Trudy?
No.
Okay, any member comments? Dennis had something and T has something. Let's start with Dennis.
Side, I want to thank Trudy and Chet and their offices for putting this together. It certainly helps me to keep track of things. And I hope that we don't have to do a whole lot more, that we can meet in person as soon as possible. That's it.
Thank you, Dennis. T and then Patricia. T, you are next.
Actually, it's more of a question. Does this DRA have history of approving demolition prior to approval of a brownfield plan if there is only a local TIF capture? You understand my question?
I do understand it. I'm going to defer that to Terry, I'm sorry, to Jeff and to Trudy to see if any of the other brownfield plans included demolition. I'm trying to think of Maple City.
Yeah, I'm trying to think right now, Kathy. T, that's a good question. I'm trying to think our 4 brownfield plans that we have in place. I want to say all 4 of them, I believe we had the brownfield plan in place prior to the demo occurring. So you're correct. I think that the demo on the 4 brownfield plans that occurred, we had that in place prior to demolition occurring.
But with regard to Maple City, it's the opposite, correct? They've already demoed and rebuilt, and now they're looking to put in a brownfield plan.
Yeah, but I think we've, that may be something we need to update on, because I think we're not going to proceed on that.
Okay, all right, we can,
I can-
that's
I
for, that's for a future agenda then.
Yeah, but I think where T may be going with this is that the statute does allow you as a brownfield authority to approve a brownfield plan using local tax increment to repay eligible costs that were incurred prior to approval of a brownfield plan. Obviously, it's subject to the authority approving it, and it's subject to going through the normal process, to ultimately get it approved. The local unit has to approve the plan or concur with the terms of the plan, and then the public hearing, and then the county board of commissioners approving it. So there's some risk there potentially, but depending on support of the project, it'd be nice to get the brownfield plan obviously in place prior to the project occurring. It's cleaner that way. So sometimes timing doesn't always work that way.
Just as a follow-up on that, and I'd have to check back on our dates, but I thought we did demolition on the site on Cherry Bend Road prior to the brownfield plan, because we had to get that house down so that EPA could get to the site and do their work. So
Yeah, true.
that one may be one where we actually, the demolition occurred prior to us getting the brownfield plan in place with the new purchaser.
That's true, Trudy. I was thinking that might have been one that we did that on, correct?
Thank you.
You didn't pursue state TIF in that case, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Well, this is big enough project, and the demolition is pretty pricey, so it would make sense to pursue both local and state TIF. Therefore, got to go through the whole process prior to demolition.
Okay, if you're done, T, I'm going to go
Yes,
to Patricia
thank you.
next, and then back to you, Dennis, but Patricia's next.
Thank you. First, my comment is I'm very pleased that we have the application and accepted it. So we are starting on a first step, and I hope we can keep that the Sweetbread Inc. will continue to move project. would be a major asset here in our county. But let me take off my Brownfield hat and put on the commissioner hat. Tony, to address your questions, I understand where you're coming from, concern that residents have. We can only meeting that Janik, myself, and Rick Barreca, and Tim Stein and others were at. Rick was very definite about his plans to begin this summer and have it finished in terms of demolition by the fall. So there's no way that that can be guaranteed. And of course, the coronavirus. But I am sure that their intent is to continue direction. And as Chet has said before, we remain very optimistic, cautious that this will be done this summer. I think they feel it's in their best as well, not just from a safety standpoint for community, but I heard Rick say, so that they have some options in terms of where they place structures and also the value of the property itself. So I wish I could tell you more than that, but that's the conversation that's taken place to date regarding demolition.
Thank you for that, Pat.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Patricia. We'll go back to Dennis.
Yes, I just want to say, has anybody else been having some audio problems in the last 2 or 3 minutes? Or is it just me? Because I could just get little tads of what people are saying. I think I am ambitious for did Jeff's and T's, but that's okay. It's I didn't want the only one. That's it.
It's been breaking in and out a little bit, Dennis. You're not the only one.
Right. We're all in this.
Yeah, not a little.
We're all in this together.
Kind of have to read between the lines.
Any other member comments? Rick.
Could I, this is Chard, could I come in with one? I don't want to get the horse before the cart or the cart before the horse, whatever, but there was a report, and at one of the meetings I was at the Township Hall, that last fall to this past spring, there was supposed to be some renderings possibly of the hotel itself, not any of the other structures. Is that in the near future? Do you see any renderings coming out of the hotel?
I cannot answer that. I don't know if anybody else can. I have not seen anything.
Will that be up to the owners of the hotel? We would not be involved with that process, nor can we speak on their behalf.
Renderings of the actual buildings is not something that the Brownfield traditionally requires or has any influence or say on. That does have to go through the township itself.
Yeah, I understand that. I just thought possibly there, like leaks of everything, that there might be a leak of some of that information when some of that might be coming forward. So I don't want to get ahead of myself or you. I know what the meeting is about, but I just thought if anybody had any inkling or any word on something that would be coming forth in the future.
Well, Jeff raised his hand. So Jeff, do you have a comment on that?
Well, I was just going to say, you made a comment that we don't require them, but I believe we would, we would request them if we could in our Part 2 application. So that would be something that would be coming.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, Rick Foster, you had your hand up.
I was just going to comment, I think it's good that they're moving ahead with the demolition, because with what I'm afraid we are going to be facing, not just locally, but nationally and internationally, I have questioned that anybody is going to be putting multiple $1 million into a luxury resort in the next couple of years. This is going to be a while before they can be certain that they're going to have much cash flow from it. It may become a good time to work on it if labor costs go down, but getting the demolition done so it's better for the community is, I think, a real good move, and I'm glad we're in a way supporting that. But I fear the rest of the project isn't going to come even close to the calendar that we have seen. Just a guess.
All right, thank you. Any further comments? Okay, then we can welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Dennis and a second by Rick. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.